Hey folks, this is the one and only Warwolf howling out at you, and it's been a long time coming. I know I promised this, and it's finally here. I'm doing my first anime review, and what am I reviewing? Well, I am reviewing Tiger Mask Double. It is rendered with the letter W, much like Kamen Rider Double. So, you're probably looking at this picture and going, okay, which one is actually Tiger Mask in this particular shot? The answer is technically both, and yet at the same time, at this scene in the opening titles, neither. So let me explain it to you. Tiger Mask Double is a series that is meant to work as a sequel to the original series. Yes, I did say the original series. There was a previous Tiger Mask anime released in the 1970s. Now, in the 70s, the character of Tiger Mask's, predecessor, the original Tiger Mask, was a wrestler who decided to turn face after finding out that one of the orphans who was living at the same orphanage that he had grown up in, decided they wanted to be a heel wrestler because they were really into the way Tiger Mask behaved. So the anime basically ran like from 1969 until 1971. So I did say it was the 70s. It technically is. And it spawned effectively two sequels. The first was called Tiger Mask 2. I know nothing about that series at all. The other one it spawned is Tiger Mask Double, which effectively ignores the second anime. Now, Tiger Mask also basically inspired, quite literally, real life versions of Tiger Mask. Now, the first, I believe, was Satoru Sayama. I'm probably mispronouncing that. Anyway, so Tiger Mask Double officially launched in 2016. And eventually made its way over to Crunchyroll, which is where I got a chance to see it. So the series focuses on really two people. The first is Naoto Azuma. Now, this is the guy who actually is the man behind the mask of, Tiger Mask. Naoto is an individual who was basically rendered homeless as a result of a massive earthquake and eventually took up an interest in professional wrestling, where he ended up training under, I'm probably going to butcher this name, Daisuke Fujii, who ran a company called Zippang, Zipang, Pro Wrestling, and basically he was just starting out as a young wrestler, training alongside other wrestlers at that wrestling dojo. Yes, it's like a full-on school where you would actually live and train, and it's a real thing. Look up the New Japan Pro Wrestling Dojo if you get the chance. Literally, for example, Jushin Thunder Liger, who was one of the best-known wrestlers in New Japan, literally spent his entire career living out of that dojo, as far as I've been led to understand, at least according to Lion's Pride, which was the book regarding the history of New Japan Pro Wrestling. So anyway, alongside these other wrestlers and Daisuke himself, Naoto formed a friendship with Daisuke's son, Takuma. And they ended up basically, having dreams of, one day being great professional wrestlers themselves. They end up getting what seems to be a big break for Zippang Pro Wrestling when a group called Global Wrestling Monopoly, I'm not making that up, that's literally what they were calling themselves, GWM, basically decides they want to have an inter-promotional show. It does not go well. How do I mean it doesn't go well? Well, we get a couple of things happening as a result of this rather whole unique situation. So, how unique? Well, first off, we meet one of the primary antagonists of the show during this. This guy. Now, we don't know what his real name is, but at the time of his first appearance, he is simply known as Yellow Devil. It's a weird name. I get it, but to be fair, he does kind of look like a demon, and I think that's the whole point of the mask. During a match of the main event between himself and Daisuke Fuji, he pulls off a variant version of the Spanish Fly, where instead of, literally having, your opponent land on his back, again, that's pretty much how the Spanish Fly works, this literally dropped him on his head. And effectively, this guy basically ended up being wheelchair bound for most of the rest of the series. He was also severely cut by lacerations caused by claws that Yellow Devil had in his costume. This ends up putting Daisuke effectively in a wheelchair, again, for most of the series. In fact, he's been in basically recovery for 3 years by the time the series begins proper. After that first match, we literally get a 3-year time skip. Naoto has trained under one Kentaro Ken Takaoka, a former professional wrestler himself, and once wrestled under the identity of, get this, Yellow Devil. He was also apparently a friend of the original Tiger Mask, whether that was, immediately before Tiger Mask turned face, or if it was something that developed after. Again, I'm not sure, simply because I've never seen the original show. I would love to see the original show, but I'm not going to go looking for it on pirate sites because I don't condone pirating. And, good luck getting it imported from Japan, even if you can. It'll cost through the nose. So I'm not going to sweat that. So Kentaro basically runs a motorcycle shop and happens to have a very headstrong young niece named Haruna. And I'm not even sure if he actually does anything regarding the motorcycle shop in the entire series. For all I know, it's probably just stuff they do off screen. I could be wrong. But there you go. He trains Naoto at a facility that apparently had been created by Naoto Date, the original Tiger Mask. There's a really sad situation there with that. Apparently, at the end of the original Tiger Mask series, when he got unmasked, supposedly, according to Tiger Mask Double, they went with the idea that he was so demoralized by the unmasking that he felt he had lost the trust of the children upon whom the behalf of the orphanage that he was fighting for. I don't think that would have been a thing. Actually, that's almost worse than his original, apparently, his original apparent fate. Because in Tiger Mask 2, from what I've read, he straight up gets murdered. I'm not sure if it was deliberate or not, but I think he got hit by a car or something. I'm not really sure. But either way, this puts Daisuke in the hospital for at least the next 3 years, where he's largely confined to a wheelchair. So Naoto is training to get revenge on Yellow Devil. And he's not the only one. Daisuke's son Takuma is also looking to get revenge on Yellow Devil. but he ends up doing some pretty crazy shit. How crazy? Well, he actually gets recruited by the current Yellow Devil to join what's known as Tiger's Den. Now, this was the original organization that the first Tiger Mask fought in the original manga and the later anime based on it. How crazy is their training? Well, this is literally in, like, winter storm conditions. That is Takuma being pulled off a cliff by a fellow hopeful in the attempt to get to the top of a mountain where they were supposed to actually, graduate from their final training course. So they basically went through the training from hell. Ken Takaoka, who worked for Tiger's Den as the apparently original version of Yellow Devil, put Naoto through something similar. By the way, Takuma does not fall. But if you look at the very, very far right here, you'll actually see the guy that was trying to pull him off actually did. Takuma managed to obviously hang on, and, he found a foothold of his own and basically sent that other guy flying. So, yeah. As a result of that, he ends up being the first one to reach the summit, and as a result is given the identity of Tiger the Dark, a new tiger-based character that Tiger's Den has developed. Tiger's Den, again, is also sometimes called Tiger's Cave, is basically a group of, I don't want to say mercenaries because they are all literally loyal to Tiger's Cave, Tiger's Den, whatever you want to call it, but they are basically, for the most part, dicks. At least in terms of the upper management. So, 3 years after Daisuke's injury, Naoto has been fully trained in as much of the ways of Tiger's Den as possible, in addition to the training he was already undergoing at Daisuke's wrestling dojo. The result is his very first appearance as Tiger Mask, taking on the mask and cape of the original character. So he first appears taking the spot of a former member of Zippong Pro Wrestling's roster who is, quite honestly, terrified to be going up against another member of Tiger's Den. One, in fact, who had been around 3 years before, and which Naoto himself already has some unfinished business with. Over the course of the series, we get a number of matches between, Naoto and Takuma's, various personas against other wrestlers, whether they be from, New Japan Pro Wrestling or Global Wrestling Monopoly or, whatever. So, Monopoly, shorthand for Global Wrestling Monopoly, actually was kind of an interesting situation because, again, it's meant to be a shot at the World Wrestling Federation, or as it is these days, World Wrestling Entertainment. So it's basically a situation in which Tiger's Den, using GWM as a front, is basically trying to take over all the wrestling territories in Japan. Again, this is meant to be something of a shot at WWE and their very expansionist actions in the 1980s, where they basically almost entirely took over professional wrestling in the United States, with really only Jim Crockett Promotions, later WCW, was really left to stand up to them. And even then, WWE eventually, effectively, conquered even them. So, obviously you have quite a bit going on with just Takuma and, Naoto. But in addition, we've also got Haruna Takaoka, who is the niece of Kentaro. Now, she basically comes into the show more or less as a longtime friend of Naoto, meeting him when Ken brings him in to start training him. She ends up becoming his agent and also eventually takes on a masked identity of her own. She's been known, as his agent, but he doesn't, I don't think he has any idea that she ends up taking on the identity of Spring Tiger, sometimes called Masked Tiger Springer. Because originally they call her in the anime, when it was dubbed over, they called her Tiger Springer in the episode in which this character makes its initial debut. But I guess she's officially considered to be Spring Tiger. She also has a romantic interest in Naoto, as far as I'm aware, which means she kind of has an unintentional rival in the form of, and again, I know I'm going to be butchering this name, Ruriko, Yamashina. Now, she ultimately ends up forming a romantic relationship, I think, with Takuma, which is kind of hilarious. So, at this point, as far as I know, nothing comes of the apparent crush that she has on Naoto. At least I don't think so. Anyway, she is basically in on the revenge scheme that Naoto and Ken have to try to get a hold of, Yellow Devil. And like I said, she eventually becomes a wrestler herself, although apparently her parents are entirely against it. So it's kind of a reason why she ended up going under a mask, although at some point, she's already 19 when the series begins. So I'm going to assume at some point she's just going to go, you know what, screw it, I'm doing what I want. So then we have a few other major characters. And one of the big ones is actually an ally. So we have Kenji Tanaka, who is under the name Fukuwara Mask. Now, he primarily is more of a comedic wrestler, but we do get an episode where he basically ends up showing off just how dangerous the man is when he ends up getting, basically injured and briefly freaks out and just starts beating the crap out of people. As it turns out, Kenji Tanaka is a former wrestler for Tiger's Den. And in fact, was the trainer, apparently, for them. So, what does that mean? Well, he actually has made contact with none other than the one and only Yellow Devil. Of course, Yellow Devil is not going by that name at that point. In fact, he's taken on an entirely different identity. But we'll get to that in a minute. So, another major character in this series is Kevin Anderson. Now, this guy ends up being a longtime friend and ally of, well, not, I wouldn't say long time, but an ally, at least, of Takuma. Now, I'm going to say this. I could be wrong, but it seemed like there was some hint that he might have had a romantic interest in Takuma. I can't prove that, but he does at one point show up at the hospital where Takuma is recovering, sees him with Ruriko, and I should note, he brought flowers, and he throws them away, acting almost as if he basically felt like he was a jilted lover. Now, obviously there was no indications of any actual romance, but it does seem like it was hinted that he had a romantic interest in Takuma, just based on that behavior. He basically ends up getting a little bit more, shall we say, indoctrinated into the more heelish manner and behavior of Tiger's Den. By the time the series ends, according to all information I've learned since, he ends up destitute. He basically destroyed his friendship with Takuma, and, from there, things just didn't really go his way. We do get a few legacy characters from the original Tiger Mask, apparently. For example, Red Death Mask, I think that's his name. Red Death Mask is the name of the individual. He basically appears to be, a latter-day legacy wrestler. We're going to see a couple of those, actually, in the series, and you will run into them as the series goes on. Once Tiger Mask makes his debut, Tiger's Den freaks out, and they are legitimately, freaking out over the idea that anybody has taken up that identity. I'm kind of surprised they didn't, retake the identity after apparently the original Tiger Mask seemingly just vanished into the ether. But they didn't, and then you've got, Tiger Mask. Now, the one thing I will say I love about this show is that you're going to see animated incarnations of real-life wrestlers from New Japan Pro Wrestling. I'm not joking. In fact, Kenny Omega is one of them. Kenny Omega, a member of the Bullet Club at the time this series was made, and obviously now part of the Elite over in AEW, if you've been following my AEW reviews, is one of several characters based off of the real-life wrestlers. We also get Toru Yano, Tetsuya Naito, Bad Luck Fale. F-A-L-E. I mean, if somebody... It might be Bad Luck Fale. I could be wrong. Tama Tonga, Yoshihashi, Tomoshiro Ishii, Togi Makabe, and Yuji Nagata are among the few others that you will see. Now, there is one character who I think is completely made up for the show called Ryu Wakamatsu. I don't know, but I'm fairly sure he is not a real person. But at the time, the show also acknowledged the existence of then NJPW champion Kazuchika Okada, who is the champion at the time of Tiger Mask during the show. Hiroshi Tanahashi is also in the show. So, we get a lot of real-life wrestlers from New Japan in this. And actually, it was kind of interesting because as far as I know, I think there's only one or two of them who was actually voiced by the real wrestler. I think. So, Makabe is voiced by the real guy. I think that might be it. Let me just see. Kota Ibushi is actually voiced by the real guy, which is kind of ironic because Ibushi would actually for a while portray Tiger Mask double, as in Naoto's specific version of Tiger Mask, as a real-life wrestler. He would actually wrestle under the mask of Tiger Mask from the anime, but they referred to him as Tiger Mask Double because there was actually an already active Tiger Mask wrestler. I'm not even kidding about that. You literally actually had Tiger Mask and Tiger Mask Double teaming up. So that's pretty cool, actually. Pretty much all the other wrestlers, aside from Makabe, are apparently, Makabe and Ibushi, I should say, are apparently voiced by, regular voice actors. Which is kind of ironic, because I would have loved to have heard Kenny Omega in the actual show, but it is what it is. In any case, The series eventually has Tiger Mask encounter Yellow Devil, or at least it seems to be Yellow Devil. Turns out it's somebody completely different, somebody who was there 3 years prior when Yellow Devil injured Daisuke. So where is Yellow Devil? Well, that's where we get a little crazy. Because by the end of the series, we encounter several other tiger-themed wrestlers. So let me run down some of our other tiger characters here. We have Big Tiger II. He is a legacy wrestler, in fact, the son of the original Big Tiger. However, because he is somewhat shorter, he regards himself as probably not really worthy of being called Big Tiger, but still goes by the name Big Tiger II. He ends up being an adversary of Tiger Mask on behalf of Tiger's Den. And eventually we are introduced to another wrestler who goes by the name Tiger the Black. He seems to be first generation. So that's kind of an interesting thing in and of itself. As far as I know, they never named this guy off. And even if they did, I've got nothing on it. So basically, we also have King Tiger. And King Tiger is one of the quote-unquote 4 heavenly kings, or the 4 tigers. So these are some of the top guys in Tiger's Den. So you have King Tiger, Big Tiger II, Tiger the Black, and then we get this guy, the third. Tiger the Great the Third. I'm trying to figure out how best to really discuss this guy. Long story short, he is the original antagonist. Well, not original. Well, yeah, he's the antagonist, really, for Tiger Mask, because this is the guy he's been after all this time. This is the Yellow Devil that they have been looking for. He is apparently the grandson of the original Tiger the Great. He's never really named beyond that, so he basically becomes the leader of Tiger's Den and is actually the GWM champion. And by the way, when I mentioned earlier that GWM is meant to be a shot at WWE, I really wish I had a screenshot of it at the time, but I don't have it at the time of this particular review. Their belt is literally modeled after the WWE World Title and Universal belt that they've been using for the last couple of years. Right down to the font. Quite literally. So this guy ends up being one of the most powerful wrestlers in the show. And he actually takes out both Takuma and Naoto when each one attempts to take him down. Ultimately, Naoto manages to rally and ends up taking him down, and also initiates the reason for the name Tiger Mask Double. During the match with Naoto the first time around, basically, Naoto ends up having half his mask ripped off during an episode right before the end of the series. And Haruta basically splices together what remains of Naoto's mask, which is effectively half the mask, with half of Takuma's mask, creating effectively double tigers. in one general identity, a literal Tiger Mask double. Going into the ring with the blessing of Takuma, the NJPW locker room, and, of course, Daisuke Fuji, who is right there in the audience, I believe, looking to see Tiger Mask emerge victorious, he indeed does. By the end of the series, Tiger Mask double has become truly double as Takuma takes up a version of the identity where one half of his mask on the left side is Tiger the Dark and the right side is Tiger Mask. While Takuma does that, we have Naoto using right side of his mask being Tiger the Dark and left side being Tiger Mask. The two decide to go their separate ways and continue wrestling. I forget exactly where Takuma ends up deciding to go, but Naoto decides to go to Mexico. We also get a little bit of a hint of what's going on with some of the other wrestlers through the course of the series. Odin, who is a wrestler for Tiger's Den and one of the first to be defeated by Tiger Mask, ends up leaving Tiger's Den. Of course, by that point, Tiger's Den eventually doesn't give a damn, and they're so focused on trying to beat Tiger Mask, they don't care. Tiger's Den itself effectively goes, for the moment, defunct, but again, I mean, it's an anime. It wouldn't be all that hard to see them come back. After all, the original Tiger Mask defeated them, and they came back, so why not? Anyway, if you're looking for a good wrestling-inspired anime, this isn't bad. The series overall has some great artwork. I mean, again, take a look at the artwork just on the third. I mean, that's great. Then you've got Tiger the Dark, of course, which is a great design. And, I mean, I would be absolutely, remiss to not bring up Tiger Mask. Because, again, the design is very, very cool. And the artwork is great. It's done by Toei. So, they're at least going to give it, they're at least, even if they're half-assing it, it still looks good. That's one of the things I've found to be a rather interesting point for them. Now, the series had only something like 30-odd episodes, tops, maybe less. But, I mean, for what it wasn't bad. It was done partly to celebrate the anniversary of Tiger Mask, and it was commissioned by New Japan Pro Wrestling. So, all right, I can live with that. I think most of us could. So, if you're looking for a lot of wrestling moves, however, you might be disappointed, as a lot of these wrestling matches come off almost more as if they were basically street fights. And it's mostly just a lot of punching and kicking. You don't see a lot of the more complex wrestling moves. You will see them break something out occasionally, like the Sling Blade. Ryu ends up using the key lock and actually gets himself so dizzy he ends up losing the match because of it. We get the Rainmaker from Kazuchika Okada. Hiroshi Tanahashi does the High Fly Flow. But, I mean, again, if you're looking for, a lot of, major wrestling moves, you're not going to see too much. Again, this is most of them, throwing punches, kicks, the occasional clothesline. We don't see a lot in the way of, body slams, hip tosses, or that much else. We do get the German suplex because the original Tiger Mask basically used that as a finisher. But Naoto develops his own version of a finisher, which is, let's just say this would never be really able to be accomplished in anything other than an anime. Or, some form of, novel or video game. Because I really don't think you could get the Tiger's Fang, I think that's what he ends up calling it, in real life. I really don't think you can do that. Could be wrong. Again, if you're looking for something that is at least wrestling inspired, and that at least still has some tangential ties to professional wrestling, you really couldn't do better at this point other than maybe Want to Be the Strongest in the World, but I mean, that is a little bit overly fan servicey, so if you're not worried about fan service, you probably want to stay away from that. But, I mean, at least there's some good wrestling in that as well. But if you're looking for something that at least is wrestling inspired and which itself is actually kind of a case of recursive fiction, or maybe, I guess the word I'm looking for is defictionalization. Tiger Mask Double and Tiger Mask aren't bad choices. Again, there are 3 overall Tiger Mask anime. I've never seen the first 2, and the second one has effectively been retconned out of existence, or at the very least, it's ignored by Double. So if you can get your hands on the original Tiger Mask anime, or even the manga, I mean, I would say do it, just to see, you know, how close to real wrestling it is. I mean, if you can get your hands on Ultimate Muscle, the Kinnikuman Legacy, that is also a wrestling anime that, I mean, honestly, they got more wrestling in that than I think they do in Tiger Mask Double, but I could be wrong. And I think that's also I think that might even be another Toei-based anime. And that's also based off of another anime as well called Kinnikuman. So that's also a legacy anime. And I will say this, like, Ultimate Muscle at least has the balls to try to make their own version of the NWO with the DMP. I forget what it stands for, though, but whatever. And to be fair, one of their main characters was literally named Robin Mask. Kevin Mask, which is directly meant to be a reference to Kevin Nash. Tiger Mask Double gets extra points for the fact that they actually brought in real-life wrestlers for this, in terms of, like, having real wrestlers be in the show in terms of their, you know, animation of these guys. But I will give Makabe and Ibushi extra credit just for the fact that they did voice themselves. That's pretty cool. So again, if you're looking for a wrestling-related anime, you could probably do worse. It's questionable as to whether or not you could do better, and there really isn't a lot of other wrestling anime out there. The only other ones I know of off the top of my head, like I said, are Kinnikuman, Ultimate Muscle, the Kinnikuman Legacy, which I don't know what it's called in Japan. I know Ultimate Muscle, the Kinnikuman Legacy is the name given to it here in the US. I'm pretty sure the original series was just called Kinnikuman. Knikuman. Ironically enough, the anime for Kinnikuman resulted in the release of these very odd-looking figures called Muscle, which was apparently treated as an acronym, MUSCLE. I don't know what it was supposed to stand for. But yeah, that's literally where those figures are actually from. They're based off of that anime. Again, there's Wanna Be the Strongest in the World, which I believe that might be another Toei Picture release, but I could be wrong. I don't know who did the animation for that. Again, that one is a little more likely to see some actual wrestling holds in it, but I think that's largely, again, just for the fan service. But again, like, this is as much as I can think of for wrestling anime. Tiger Mask Double, I think, would probably be the best out of them if you're just looking for something fun that, again, just has that tangential connection to the real world of professional wrestling, which, again, they defictionalized Tiger Mask Double and Tiger the Dark. So that's also a little bit of a fun thing. And, of course, you've got the original Tiger Mask, of which there have been literally another 5 individuals to use the name. So this is a whole thing. On the whole, would I recommend Tiger Mask Double? Yes, absolutely. There are so few wrestling anime out there that this series is worth a look, even if it's not the best in terms of, you know, really giving us, like, matches where it's about the wrestling holds. I mean, it's a good revenge/redemption story, which, I mean, I hate to say it, but yeah, that's kind of what this is, and a lot of wrestling anime are kind of based on that. Basic premise, even wrestling anime. I mean, Jushin Thunder Liger was technically, you know, defictionalized because it started out as an anime that had something else as its plot, but wrestling was involved. So yeah, that's been a whole thing. Anyway, folks, that was my somewhat rambling review for Tiger Mask Double. I'm sorry it wasn't better. This is my first time doing this. I will try to get an occasional anime review out every now and then. I'm also going to branch out a little bit beyond just wrestling and anime because, again, the series is called Wrestling, Anime, Whatever. And I'm not sure what my next video is going to be about other than obviously doing a review of this past week's Dynamite. I'll probably be discussing Double or Nothing sometime in the next couple of episodes. And we'll probably figure out something else for me to review or at least to talk about sometime in the very near future. So if you liked this video, and you probably didn't, but if you did, by all means, please give it a like, hit subscribe, hit that notification bell, because seriously, the YouTube algorithm is the only thing worse than the bastards over at Tiger's Den. Anyway, folks, this is Warwolf howling out at you. Thank you for tuning in for this review. There will be more to come. And again, if you liked it, hit like, hit subscribe, ring the notification bell, leave me a comment, give me a couple of questions, or even just, I don't know, find some fault in the video. I don't care. Anyway, folks, I'm out. Peace!